Hey everyone, and welcome back to Newegg TV. My name is Paul. Today I'm going to be doing an unboxing and overview of this motherboard right here, the best motherboard that ASUS has ever made. Possibly. Well, I'll stand behind that one. This is a really nice motherboard. It's the Rampage IV Black Edition, the successor to the Rampage IV Extreme in some respects. They've actually done a lot of upgrades and changes to it, and it's really best suited for Intel's Ivy Bridge E processors. It's also compatible with Sandy Bridge E processors. But all that being said, let's go ahead and take a closer look at the retail box. Now, if you're wondering why ASUS is choosing this time in particular to come out with an X79 chipset board with the socket 2011, that is Intel's Enthusiast platform right now, and it actually came out about 2 years ago. It was when X79 and socket 2011 launched. So while it might seem slightly older, Intel also has released this year Ivy Bridge E, which is a new series of processors based on the Ivy Bridge manufacturing process, which can drop into most socket 2011 boards. So that is why it's still a very viable chipset, and it's still a very viable platform, whether you're talking about gaming or really high-end computing type tasks. So this is going to make a great workstation. It's going to make a great gaming system, of course, and then ASUS has done a ton of stuff here specifically aimed at overclockers, and to that end, this board has already won at least 5 world records in the OC main event that took place right after the Ivy Bridge E launch. But that being said, we have some vitals down here in the bottom. So this, of course, supports Intel's Core i7 processors. Those are Sandy Bridge E and Ivy Bridge E. So depending on how you're looking at the generations and how those break down, there's basically maybe 5 or 6 processors that you should really drop into the system or consider dropping into the system. Here's one of them, the 4960X. This is probably going to be a very popular one. The 4930K is also probably going to be a very popular one, as is the 4820K right now. And then, of course, if you have an older Sandy Bridge E processor, you can also drop that into this. But you get the X79 chipset, LGA 2011 socket. So just bear in mind, this is not compatible with any of Intel's mainstream socket 1155 or 1150 processors. You also get up to 4-way SLI and 4-way crossfire configurations. So setting up really kind of ridiculous, over-the-top, highest of the high-end systems is going to be what this board is really all about. Also, when you talk about comparisons between the Rampage IV Black Edition and the Rampage IV Extreme, one of the differences is the game you get with the Rampage IV Extreme. You're getting Assassin's Creed IV Black Flag, which I have not tried yet personally, but I've heard so many great things about, and I really need to try it soon enough. Hopefully, maybe Steve will buy me a copy for Christmas, but I'm just saying. I mean, Steve's over there behind the camera. And okay, so let's talk about some stuff that you do get. One thing that you do get is the OC panel. And if you're not familiar with the OC panel, it's been around for a little bit now. It's shipped with some of the ASUS high-end ROG motherboards. You're now getting it with the Rampage IV Black Edition. So this is a little device. It can stand outside the computer, or you can actually slide it into a 5 1/4 inch bay. It can do so much really cool stuff that you may or may not actually use depending on whether or not you're a hardcore overclocker. But you get stuff on there like a post-debug readout. You can use it for a hardware monitor. It has fan profiles as well as 4 fan connectors inside it. I'm going to pop this out and show you guys once we get to that as well. You can run leads from it to control up to 4 graphics cards. It has Sub-Zero Sense, as you can see right there, so you can actually have a couple read points where you can actually do Sub-Zero temperature readings with temperature probes. And it gives you direct control of voltages and a lot of frequencies that you can do while your system is up and running. So again, super convenient and useful for overclockers. And next up, we have the Supreme Effects Audio, and that's going to be one of the big jumps from this board again compared to the Rampage IV Extreme. They've actually gone with a really high-end audio on this, so I'm going to again be showing you this, a little bit more of this, but there's a quick readout for it if you want to. They're using Elna Premium audio caps, Supreme Effects Shielding, and an EMI protection cover. You get differential design with premium op amps, WEMA film capacitors, and then you get a Sirius Logic DAC that's specifically for the front panel audio, and then you also have a Texas Instruments 600 ohm hi-fi headphone amp that's also built in. So you basically get roughly equivalent of an ASUS Zonar Phoebus built into this motherboard. You also have Extreme Engine Digi Plus 3 as compared to the Digi Plus 2nd generation that you got with the Rampage IV Extreme. And then you also have upgraded Wi-Fi. You get 802.11 AC integrated. It's not going by way of an add-on Pci Express card. It's built right in there to the motherboard's I/O at the back, so you're not taking up one of your expansion slots with that. And then again, that's compared to the 802.11n that you got with the Rampage IV Extreme. All right, we have some more detailed specs here on the back. This is kind of the rundown of just about everything on the board, whether you talk about CPU compatibility, chipset, memory expansion slots, multi-GPU capability, storage that's built in, USB, LAN, wireless, HD audio, and the form factor, which is extended ATX. So bear that in mind. You do need an eATX compatible case if you're going to be putting this motherboard into a case. And then for compatibility, for example, you get 2 more SATA 6 gigabits per second ports. That gives you 6 total versus 4 that you got with the Rampage 4 Extreme. 2 more USB 3.0 ports for 8 total. And then, of course, Bluetooth 4.0 along with that wireless AC. And then you also get some cool software stuff like Ps2 for networking package management. And your memory speed has increased. That's primarily by virtue of the new Ivy Bridge E processors, but you are getting up to a maximum of 2.8 gigahertz versus 2.4 gigahertz that was available with the Rampage 4 Extreme. Taking a look inside the retail box, we have the motherboard itself. Of course, we're going to come back to that. We will first talk about accessories, which are also included in a little separate black box right here. All right, so first off, the OC panel, of course. I want to do some more detail on that, so we'll come back to that one as well. I/O shield, of course, which you should get with just about any motherboard you buy. This one happens to be all black on the back, going with the color scheme. Everything's clearly labeled on there, so you can tell which is which, and you get some squishy electromagnetic shielding on the back. Since this board is designed for multiple video card usage, they provide you with lots of video card bridges, or at least SLI bridges. For SLI, you get a 4-way SLI bridge like this one. It's a rigid ASUS branded PCB. It is black as well, so that's going to match quite nicely, and as this is typically a very visible part of your computer build once you actually have everything installed. You get the same thing in a 3-way trim, and then you also get both a 2-way SLI connector and a 2-way crossfire connector, which is also very nice since they're both the black Republic of Gamers logoed ones. Again, very visible item in a build, so nice to have both of those available since the crossfire ones aren't always going to look quite so pretty. You also get a ROG case magnet, actually, a very sturdy metal one, which looks pretty cool, has a bit of texture on there. So I like that. That's a good idea. It's a magnet, so you can pop it onto your case, and then if you get tired of it, you can remove it. You get your ROG Rampage IV Black Edition Motherboard User's Guide with all the good User's Guide type stuff. You get the disc here with your drivers and whatnot that you should probably download the latest ones directly from the ASUS website. There's also another little ROG case badge in there, the traditional red and black one. You also get this set of stickers, which I really like. It lets you label your serial ATA cables and whatnot so you can tell what's what, and that about does it for the guide. Oh, also, can't forget your Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag game, which little code for it right there. This is a 5¼ bay adapter, and that is for that OC panel. So simply pop that into a 5¼ bay, and that lets you slot it right into there. So just the actual LED part is visible. And then over here we have the rest of the accessories. So let's see what else we got in here. This is an empty bag. What could that have been? Oh, okay. This is the special proprietary cable for connecting that OC panel up to the motherboard. You get a total of 10 serial ATA cables. There they all are. These are the, it looks like you get a couple that are all black, and then a few more, 6 more that are the black and white, more traditional ASUS ones that I've seen. These are all, of course, going to be compatible with any type of up to SATA 6 gigabits per second SSD. And it looks like half of them have one 90-degree angle plug, and the other half are straight plugs on both sides. We also have your dual-band Wi-Fi antenna right there with the little extensions, so you can connect that up, set it somewhere where you get a good Wi-Fi signal connection to your router. You get the ROG Connect cable. If you're not into using the OC panel, you can use this USB-A to USB-A cable to connect up another computer, a laptop or a tablet, for example, and you can run the ASUS software to actually do your overclocking with that. Of course, the OC panel kind of gives you the same functionality, but you have the choice of either one. Look, it's a black Q connector. That's like a unicorn, but that's pretty cool. If you're not familiar with the Q connector, it's one of the greatest things ever invented. It lets you plug in your front panel cables, and I like that they have given you a black one. It matches with everything else. This, finally, is a replacement back panel, LGA 2011 back plate for the motherboard, since ASUS has gone with kind of a special one that they've integrated there, which is a bit more reinforced. They're also providing you this one, so if you end up swapping that out, if you're going with a special water cooler or something like that, you have the ability to do that. Of course, some protective covering on that side. So here's a closer look at the OC panel. Starting up here, you have an LED readout screen, of course, OC button, fan control, power, as well as switching your view modes available up there at the top. Also, you have some more controls here with the start button, directional pad, as well as an OK, and then clear and reset. So you're going to be able to use those along with the LED readouts to give yourself control over all the things that this can control. Here are your temperature probe connection points, again for monitoring sub-zero temperatures, which a lot of temperature probes are not able to do without a specifically designed temperature control connection point. And then in here you get sort of more of the advanced stuff. From the bottom I can show you how you actually connect this up to your system. So you have this little pin out right there. That's going to connect to that proprietary cable that I showed you. And then right here you have a simple serial ATA power that's going to provide power to the device. Inside we can see a bunch more stuff, and I'll be honest and tell you guys that I have not personally used this device yet myself, but I can point out, for example, some voltage read points right there. Also these pinouts right here, which are used for connecting up to graphics cards for monitoring and controlling them on the fly. You have 4 integrated actual PWM 4-pin fan controllers, so you can actually wire your fans directly to this and use it to control your fans. A couple on-off switches there, which are for turning on some more advanced functions of the motherboard, such as slow mode. And then over here, you actually have a few more LEDs. Actually, I'm sorry, the LEDs are right in there for a hard drive, for example. And that's sort of a quick rundown of this. Again, ASUS has a ton more information on actually using this, and a lot of these functions are stuff that you're really only going to get into if you're a really high-level overclocker. But one last thing to point out here, again, is that there's a couple different ways you can use this. One is sort of with a stand, which it has on the back here. So we actually just pop that out. You can sort of stand that up, have it connected and running over and setting next to your computer, so you can pick it up and physically grab it and whatever is convenient to you. But if you're actually setting up this whole thing within a system, you also have the ability to take this little front piece right there, fold that forward, and that will give you access to the readouts, for example, as well as the buttons that are located on that screen, and you can simply install this in a 5¼ inch drive bay. And now on to the motherboard itself, and I'm going to start by talking about something that I can't actually show you, at least not without setting up a system with this, which unfortunately I don't have time for today. But the Uefi on this board has actually been sort of modified. It's been updated by ASUS, so you actually get a black Uefi theme, which looks pretty cool. You also get overclocking profiles integrated from the ROG team, so you can use those to automatically overclock your CPU and your memory. It gives you a great starting off point for your overclocking ventures with this board. You also get stuff like Tweaker's Paradise. It gives you an incredible amount of tweaking and tuning options from within there. So basically, when you do basic overclocking with this board, it's actually intelligent enough to go in and make some slight modifications to some of the lower level settings that you might not immediately jump into, especially if you're not deeply familiar with overclocking. So it will do that automatically for you, or you can go into Tweaker's Paradise to modify and change those settings. You get stuff like CPR boot recovery, so that allows you to quickly get the system back up and running after a failed overclock. You have stuff like a Q reset button, which is right up there. That will actually go through and clear the CMOS, and then it bypasses the S5 mode to reboot the system, and it helps you avoid stuff like a cold bug if you're doing exotic cooling or LN2 type stuff. You also get 4-way optimization with this board, which you typically don't get with the ROG boards. That's often something that you see much more frequently with ASUS mainstream boards, but 4-way optimization will automatically go in, do a complete tune of your entire system. It will do the CPU, the memory, your fans, speeds, as well as your power consumption. And I, for instance, used 4-way optimization to overclock a bunch of 4770K CPUs recently, and it was able to do them. That was on a Z87 Pro, but I was able to overclock my chips automatically to between 4.5 and 4.7, even 4.8 gigahertz, which was pretty cool. That, of course, mileage may vary depending on the CPU used. You also get SSD secure erase also built into the BIOS, so that's all pretty cool. Okay, you guys have been staring at this board long enough without me actually pointing at anything. Look, it's black. That's kind of the theme of a Black Edition board, of course. You get red highlights throughout, just much more minimal than you would typically with a standard ROG red and black color scheme. So start button, of course, ROG logo on the heatsink right there is going to light up and glow. And then you also have a separation layer here on the PCB, the audio moat as they're calling it. And this also has some LED track lighting going down it, so you'll see a bit of red there as well. So there's a bit of red, but primarily black. Flipping over to the back of the board, You can see the PCB itself, which is a very nice flat black color. And then, of course, you can see this reinforced Intel Socket 2011 bracket that they've put on the back right there. Metal back plate supports as well for some of the heat sinks, the ones that are up here on the power delivery, for example, for the CPU. And then down here in the lower left, there's actually sort of what you might recognize from maybe like the Maximus 6 formula. And that's a little bit of a backplate right there, which actually stands off from the board just slightly, but that's just giving it a bit more rigidity, a bit more support, because there's a lot of stuff going on down in that area. Next up, let me point out the fan headers on this board. All of them are 4-pin PWM capable. You get a total of 8. 2 are for the CPU. Those are located right up here, CPU main and CPU optional. So that's 1 and 2. 3 right there, 4 right here, 5 right here, 6 and 7, which are down here along the lower edge, and then 1/8 one, which is right here to the lower left of the left side CPU or memory DIMM slots. Okay, so those are all of your fan headers. Now let's take a super deep close-up look at the board. I'm going to start down here in the bottom right like I usually do, and I'm going to show you just about everything as I possibly can about this board. First off, you get a dual BIOS, so you can actually see both of those chips right there. You can actually use this BIOS switch button to switch between them. Hold on, speaking of switch, I'm going to switch over to pointing with my pen. All right, here's your front panel connection points. You can use that with your Q connector. Here is your ROG EXT. That is where you connect that cable that came along with the OC panel. There's the BIOS switch I just pointed out. Direct key is still available here, although it doesn't ship with this board, but if you have one, you can still use it. And then you get the direct key button right there. That will also act as a button that will automatically jump you into the BIOS, which is also very nice to have. Here's those 2 fan headers that I already mentioned as I was going over all the fan headers. Here's a couple USB 2.0 headers, so you can use that for a couple USB 2.0 ports. Connect those up to the front or the back. Here's the TPM, Trusted Platform Module header you can use if you're in a business environment and you need added security. Here is what is known as the Easy Plug, which is a name that I'm not super fond of, to be perfectly honest, but at least they have gone and given you just a 4-pin Molex connector right there. The Rampage 4 Extreme, for example, had a 6-pin PCI Express graphics connector. Basically, this is providing extra power to the PCI Express lanes, and you're only going to really need this if you're really maxing out your PCI Express. So if you're going with a single or 2 card graphics card configuration, you probably can do without it, but if you're plugging in more than that, it's recommended to connect that up to your power supply to provide some extra power to the PCI Express lanes. Here is your front panel audio, as well as your SPDIF out. And then to the left of that, you can see at least some of the audio componentry. So audio, again, is something that they've really done a whole lot with this board to really make sure that they're giving you an incredible experience out of the box. So of course you have that PCB moat, that sort of layer of separation on the PCB, which you can just barely see. It's like right there, kind of goes up the side. Again, that's going to light up red when the system is actually on. But you also get Pcb Shielding, so a stainless steel plated metal cover on the Supreme Effects audio chip that's right there. Uefi film capacitors, Elna high quality audio capacitors, a new op-amp differential design which reduces interference, and then you get an extra Cirrus Logic DAC which is integrated onto the board, although I can't really spot it right now. I'm sure it's on there somewhere. But that's specifically a DAC that's just for the front panel audio. That's often something that is very inferior in quality compared to your rear panel audio, so it's very nice that the ASUS has included that as well. You also get a Texas Instruments headphone amplifier for 600 ohm headphone support on the front or the rear panel. And then of course you get the ASUS Supreme Effects software that's included, so stuff like Sonic Radar, DTS Connect, and they've also included another optical SPDIF on the back panel. So there's a look at some of your audio componentry right there. And then moving on to the Pci Express. Just set the board down a little bit so it's more stable for me. Here's all your Pci Express slots, top to bottom right here. So first off, 4 full-length 16X slots, and thanks to all the bandwidth that you get with Intel's Enthusiast platform, you get a total of 40 Pci Express Gen 3 lanes. You get official 100% support, especially if you're going with Ivy Bridge E. You get support with Sandy Bridge E as well. But it works a bit more smoothly with Ivy Bridge E, at least in my experience. You can run 16X on the first slot and the fifth slot right here, or if you're going to be populating all 4, it can go 16, 8, 8, and 8. You also get a couple single PCI Express slots right there, so you can do some add-on cards depending on what configuration you're using and how much space you have available. To the right of the PCI Express, you have this right here, so that is your heatsink for your X79 chipset. X79 chipset is, again, a couple years old now, but it's still alive and kicking, and it still does give you some serial ATA connectivity. So the 6 serial ATA ports on the right here, the 4 black ones are SATA revision 2, 3 gigabits per second. So I recommend using the black ones for optical drives and mechanical hard drives. A couple more natively controlled serial ATA revision 3 6 gigabits per second ports right here in the center, and then you get 4 more integrated here on the left side. So they're giving you a lot more SATA revision 3 than you would have gotten when X79 first came out. And those are controlled by an ASMedia SATA 6 gigabits per second controller. I should also point out that the Intel controlled ones here, the 6 on the right, are capable of RAID configurations, RAID 0, 1, 5, and 10. Moving up the side of the board, let me just set it back down for a moment. We have a USB 3.0 front panel header, so that's the 20-pin one. That's another thing that was really just kind of hitting its stride when X79 launched, is USB 3.0, so they've given you some extra USB 3.0 connectivity via that. You can see the fan headers that I was kind of pointing out to you guys at the beginning, your main 24-pin motherboard power connector, of course. And then if you're looking to the right of that motherboard power connector, there's a few things to point out. So first off, you have some LED readouts. These are debugging LEDs. So you have a full 2-digit debug LED at the top of the board, but you can also use these debug LEDs for a really quick reference. So CPU, for example, VGA, DRAM, boot device. Those have all been grouped right here, and those will light up red and stay red if you're having any problems in boot. You also have a bunch of voltage read connectivity points right there. So this is what ASUS is calling Voltminder 2. And you get they've upped the number of voltage read points to 9 measurement points, and they've also provided LED indicators, so you can actually see little LEDs in between each one. And they're not just single LEDs either, they're actually color-coded, and they will change color to represent more dangerous voltage settings depending on the overclocking that you're going with. Again, one of those things that's really suited towards overclockers. You get a MemoK button right there. That works the same way the MemoK button has worked for quite some time, so you can use that to get around memory issues if you're having any compatibility problems. You have 4 dip switches right here. Those will control your PCI Express lanes. So there's a few different reasons why you might want to turn your PCI Express lanes off. One of them is if you're testing multiple video cards, for example, and you want to drop down to test, say, 1 or 2 cards, you can just turn the lanes off and turn those graphics cards off. Another really convenient thing is if you've actually set up a custom water cooling loop, for example, and you're trying to troubleshoot or something along those lines, you can actually switch those cards off without removing them, which can really be a pain in the butt if you've set up water cooling. Surface-mounted buttons, which should be standard for a board of this quality, start and reset, of course. And then more stuff over here in the upper right. So you'll notice, for example, you have LN2 mode, which is this little jumper right there. Switching that over to LN2 mode will change the characteristics of the board to provide additional stability when you're using exotic cooling. For example, switching LN2 mode on by moving that jumper over will also allow you to turn slow mode on. Slow mode will underclock your CPU, and from what I understand, can be a lifesaver if you're going for a really high overclock and you're sensing some instability. You can use that to kind of save your system before it crashes. There's another of the 4-pin fan headers right above that. And then that Q code, that's a debug LED right there at the top as well, which is infinitely helpful if you're having any problems getting your system up and running for the first time. There's that other CPU fan header, and that just about does it for that area in the upper right corner. Let's talk about the CPU socket and the DIMMs now, because that's where we're at. So CPU socket right there, socket 2011 again, Sandy Bridge E, Ivy Bridge E processors, and chances are you're going to be going with either a 3930K, a 3960X, a 3970X, a 4820K, a 4930K, or a 4960X. Did I really list all of those off right now without messing up? I'm so proud of myself. Okay, those are the processors I would recommend using on this because it's designed for overclocking, and those are all of the overclockable processors that are compatible with this motherboard. You have the ROG logo right below that, additional heatsink right there. You also have a heatsink that's up above. The power delivery is another thing that they've done a ton of stuff with on this board. So all the chokes that you can see on the board, which might be a few, they're tucked under there right now. Those are all 60 amp chokes, which is crazy overkill for the amount of power. For the CPU power delivery, you get 8+ 3-phase CPU power delivery. For memory, 2+ 2-phase memory power delivery. And then apart from the chokes themselves, all the caps that you can see on the board, even upgraded from the Rampage IV Extreme, they have gone with all 10,000 hour lifespan black metallic caps, and that's not just for the power delivery area up here, that's across the entire board. For supplemental CPU power, you have an 8-pin and a 4-pin supplemental CPU power connector, so make sure you plug those in because that's kind of important. And then of course you can't forget the memory slots, which are to the left and the right of the CPU socket. These Sandy Bridge E and Ivy Bridge E processors are capable of quad channel memory, so definitely recommend purchasing a matched set of 4 DIMMs. ASUS is going to have you use the outer DIMM slots first, or that would be preferred. That will give you a little bit more space around the CPU socket as well, depending on the size of the cooling solution that you go with, since you will need to buy an aftermarket cooling solution with the Sandy Bridge E and Ivy Bridge E processors. But that is another benefit, particularly if you're going with an Ivy Bridge E processor. It's going to be memory support. Sandy Bridge E was not the best memory overclocker. Ivy Bridge E, you can actually supports overclock speeds up to DDR3 2800. That includes 2666 as well, of course, and then all the way down the line to 1066 at the low end, non-ECC, unbuffered memory, and you can support up to 8 gig DIMMs, so 8 gigs per slot, which can give you up to a maximum of 64 gigabytes of DDR3 memory total, which is a lot. But hey, if you edit video, you can never have too much. Lastly, here's a look at the Rampage IV Black Edition. This is sort of a cool kind of combination heatsink and like little shields protective area that's back here, like kind of on the I/O. But Steve was kind of pointing out, it looks pretty cool. There's also a heat pipe connecting that one back there to this one up here, so it's gonna, whichever one might get hotter, it'll help to transfer the heat over and help to dissipate it. Let us end with the I/O at the back here. Okay. They're sticking with the Ps2 port right here. That is for backwards compatibility, since a lot of folks have Ps2 keyboards. It's a combo port, so you can use it for a keyboard or a mouse, but there it is. You also have plenty of USB 2 and 3.0, so USB 2.0, a couple right there, a couple more, oops, right there. Let me switch back to my pen. Okay, USB 3.0, 2, 4, and 6 of those total. A couple more SATA revision 3, 6 gigabits per second eSATA connectors right there. Again, those are controlled by an add-on as media chip. On the back here, you have the ROG Connect button as well as a CMOS clear button. So you can use that to clear the CMOS. You can use that for ROG Connect, and you can also use any of these ports on the back here for the USB BIOS flashback, which is super, super cool and handy. You can use that to flash your BIOS without a CPU or memory installed or anything like that. And I really like it. I've used it multiple times, and it's one of my favorite things that ASUS has come out with in recent memory. You get an Intel NIC for high quality, high speed gigabit network connectivity. There's your 802.11 AC adapter. It's integrated, of course, and there's the 2 connection points for your dual band antenna. And then finally, your analog connection points here for your integrated Supreme Effects 3 audio, as well as your microphone in, and that aforementioned SPDIF toslink out. And that is going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Once again, this has been the ASUS Rampage IV Black Edition motherboard featuring the X79 chipset and the 2011 socket for Intel Socket 2011 CPUs. Also comes with the bonus ability to induce uncontrollable fits of drooling in gamers and overclocking enthusiasts worldwide. I'm Paul with Newegg TV, and if you enjoyed this video, maybe click the like button down there. Maybe leave us a comment down in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.